Dear learner, welcome to Transnational Competition Law course, and I am going to deliver my lecture on Doctrines of Extraterritorial Application of Competition Law in European Union. In fact, dear learner, when we discuss with you the extraterritorial application of competition law in European Union, we have come across a very rich jurisprudence on the competition law, and we in the previous lecture have discussed the legislative framework of the competition law in reference to Article 81 and 82 of Treaty of Rome 1985 and Chapter 1st and 2nd of United Kingdom's Competition Act 1998 and Article 101 to 109 of the Treaty on the Functioning of European Union, shortly known as TFU 2009. And we have taken note that how these laws have given shape to the extraterritorial application of competition law in European Union. While discovering all the aspect of legislative reforms which has taken place in the European Union, we have come across major doctrines, and those doctrines deserves to be discussed in detail separately. And today's lecture is precisely, dear learner and viewers, is dedicated to the doctrines, its applications, its enforcement, and its judicial recognition in the European Union. We begin with that. As we know that we have three major enactments on the competition law. For the sake of reiteration, we are referring to Article 81 and 82 of the Treaty of Rome 1985. Dear learner, even for the sake of reiteration, we are referring to Article 81 and 82 of the Treaty of Rome 1985. We have referred to Chapter 1 and 2nd of the United Kingdom Competition Act 1998, and we have perused Article 101 to 109 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union 2009. What we deciphered out of the perusal of these three enactments in European Union, a union of 27 countries, that the long jurisdictional arm of these provisions and the catena of cases decided on the subject applies three major legal theories and doctrine. The cases which are precisely more important and to be culled out are A. Alstrom, Ocatio versus Commission of European Communities, popularly known as Wood and Pulp case, which were decided in 1993. Then we have Intel Corporation versus Commission Court of Justice of European Union. A perusal of the catena of the cases on the subject are galore, but we are precisely pulling out few cases as a testing point, and in that reference, A. Alstrom, Ocatio versus Commission of the European Communities, Wood Pulp case, popularly known as 1993, Intel Corporation versus Advanced Micro Devices Incorporation 2004, and Innolux Corporation versus Commission Court of Justice of the European Union 2015 ensured the use of three legal constructs into the principle of nationality and territoriality. The study of all the economic theories and entities, doctrines, and its implementation and enforcement, we find is well recognized by the European Court of Justice. However, the recognition of the effect doctrine per se, which has been very popular doctrine in the United States antitrust law, is applicable to European jurisdiction in extraterritorial application of competition law seems somewhat shaky and obscure. The economic entity doctrine is the first doctrine which was discussed in detail in Diastef case and as popularly known as, and the name of the case happens to be, dear learner, is the Imperial Chemical Industries Limited versus Commission, a case decided by the European Court of Justice in 1972. This case is of seminal importance in construction of application of economic entity doctrine in European Union and European Community. Diastef case, as popularly known as Diastef case, as popularly known as, applied the nationality principle and asserted over non-EC parent undertakings by attributing liability to them for illegal price fixing by the Diastef. Similar reasoning we find in European Court of Justice decision in Continental Can judgment, popularly known as Europe Ballage Corporation and Continental Can Company Incorporation versus Commission, decided in 1973. The effect of, in this case, the effect of relevant prices were briefly eluded, although the response on the application of the effect doctrine was shied away from in this case and applied to the doctrine of economic entity, which is prevalent in the European Union competition law and recognized in Diastef case as well as Europe Ballage case in 1973. Thus, we see that the application and implementation of the doctrines of extraterritorial application of competition law reached to its zenith in the case of Intel case, which recognized anti-competitive behavior of the company consisted of two different sets of abusive practices, namely loyalty rebates as well as compensation payment of Intel under the mandate of Article 102 of TIFU 2009. Thus, we see that both paid to the customer. In this case, what we find that both are paid to its customer for their breaching of contract concluded with its competitor on the market of CPUs, namely AMD. The roots of this doctrine of effect in the context of US antitrust law in European Union jurisdiction for the application of the competition provision in cases of extraterritorial nature is partly shadowed in this case. Thus, European Commission of Justice decision in Intel recognize both the implementation doctrine as well as the qualified effect of the effect doctrine or effect test as standalone and independent means. The European Commission's Court of Justice decision in Intel consistently applied the concept of conduct forming part of overall strategy in the jurisdictional context of Article 102 of TFU 2009. Now, dear learner, the implementation doctrine happens to be mostly recognized in the European Union, and the implementation doctrine represent an alternative legal construct as far as the extraterritorial application of European Community or European Union competition law is concerned. It reflects very well the inherent limitations of the economic entity doctrine, and pursuant to this, the doctrine applies territorial principle in the purview of Article 81 and 82 of the European Commission and European Court of Justice in Wood Pulp judgment have vociferously tried to implement the implementation doctrine. The Commission and as well as the European Court of Justice made it very explicit reference to Wood Pulp judgment in order to assert and buttress its extraterritorial jurisdiction over global price fixing of cartel for licensing involving undertaking from third countries. Now, the third doctrine which remains in practice and in vogue is the effect doctrine, which is based on the economic effect and the dicta of the Commission's decision in Commission's notices in the European Union. The European Court of Justice has never handed down a judgment explicitly affirming the effect doctrine, but preferring to rely on the more politically uncontroversial economic entity doctrine and implementation doctrine. The effect, however, of the effect doctrine has not been formally recognized by the European Court of Justice, but the subject matter of the jurisdiction to the interest of person in property has been well recognized. It also recognized that the effect doctrine attributed to Europe's political elite and vociferous criticism has been one of the factors of non-recognition of the effect doctrine in the jurisdiction of the 27 countries of European Union. Nonetheless, dear learner and viewers, the effect doctrine was recognized by Advocate General Maras in Diastov case, as I referred just now, as the cornerstone of the European Commission's competition law and the issue of jurisdictional response to the globalized world and economies, thus demands an effect-based approach and call for the new ways of thinking and conceptualizing under the implementation doctrine. Thus, taken together, in Wood Pulp case, the Advocate General Darmon espoused the effect doctrine and relied on the direct and substantial foreseeable effect to reach to a conclusion. Dear learner, in this lecture, we will be, besides discussing these three doctrines, we will be discussing some auxiliary principles and doctrines which has been practiced under the extraterritorial application of competition law in European Union, most notably the principles of comity and the principles of cooperation, which has also its effect. What we see that under the principles of comity, the impingement of the sovereignty by extraterritorial jurisdiction under the comity principle act as a filler to the void which is being created in the desideratum of the doctrines of implementation doctrine, effect doctrine in the European Union. Thus, what we find that the principle of comity is well recognized by the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, having two sides. One is the positive committee, which tries to give full and sympathetic considerations to other countries' important interest in its competition law, and then Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development's negative committee principles says that may prevent its law enforcement action from harming another country's important interest. The antitrust enforcement under the committee principle is also recognized invariably by the national competition authorities and European Commission network. And it is evident and pointer is the Microsoft and GE Honeywell case, which reflects the principles of committee in the conglomerate effect of the European Union in terms of extraterritorial application of competition law. Then, dear learner, we will be discussing more detail, diving deep into the judicial opinion, judicial response, and the judicial recognitions of the principles of committee as it appeared in Microsoft case, Intel case, Impagrin case, in Hoffman LaRocque Limited versus Impagrin. The citation runs like this, decided in 2004, and Intel Corporation versus Advanced Macro Devices 2004. In the same year, we find a divergent result and accumulation of sanction and detrimental effect doctrine applied under the principles of committee under the name of positive committee as an integral part of the European Union and US Agreement of 1991 and 1998. The spirit of cooperation is the another pillar which tries to fill the void created by these three doctrines of extraterritorial application within the 27 member states of the European Union and recognized under all national competition authority and European competition network. The spirit of cooperation is also partly reflected under Article 81 and 82 of the European Commission's 2004 as an effective manner platform for the exchange of informations and assistance in investigation. Precisely, dear learner, Article 11 of the Regulation 2003 and Commission's notice on competition within the network competition authorities is a living indicator to the fact that that principle has been well recognized by judicial organ of the European Union. Then, as a conclusion in my lecture, we will be focusing on the point that the series of legal theories like economic entity, implementation doctrine, and effect doctrine, how they have been applied in the European Court of Justice, and how the desideratum and the void created is being well filled up by the principles of committee and the principles of cooperation in matters of competition law as a driving force in European Union. Whatever remains the philosophical gulf between these theories and principles of implementation of the extraterritorial application of competition law, we find the EU's approach involves implementation doctrine and single economic unit doctrine to determine jurisdictions. However, few cases are evident of the fact that it also tilts towards the effect doctrine of United States antitrust law to a great extent. With this, dear learner, we'll be switching over to the main part of the lecture as we have given the synoptic outline in quite detail to make my conclusion and bring home the conclusion to you that how this doctrine of extraterritorial application of competition law in European Union works for us.